Nothing's changing.
The chaperone is gone. Welcome to Under the Finfluence.
Woo.
Wonderful to be here.
First episode, guys. I'm psyched and super psyched, Holly, to learn a lot more about what you do.
So is this actually the first episode? I feel so honored. That's very exciting.
Yeah, it is.
So we're cutting fresh waves, fresh tracks right now. That's exciting.
Yeah,
Going through the
we are
powder.
setting the tone. So this episode we have Holly Shiels. She's an amazing cardiologist. She studies Greenland sharks. I'm eager to ask her whether she's working at the cellular level or how you even compare, a heart of something that's living for 400 years to like in Hawaii doing octopus that live for like a year only. I was talking to Leon. I got a little bit of scoop. He said you're amazing.
Oh, thanks, Leon.
We're happy to have you. Introduce yourself to the
Okay. Jules, it's lovely to be here. Well, I'm Holly Shiels. I'm a professor of integrative physiology in the Division of Cardiovascular Sciences at the University of Manchester in the UK. But you probably can tell from my accent that I'm originally Canadian. I don't know, I've got accent drift, so I sound half the time one way, half the time the other. We've been in the UK studying cardiac physiology for about 20 years, and before that I did my graduate work in Vancouver in British Columbia. So the whole time I've been interested in how the environment impacts the heart, and that environment can be anything from the cold Arctic to rapidly heating temperatures, rapidly cooling temperatures, changes in pH, pollutants, and how life stage of an animal impacts how they respond to that environment, because we don't act the same if we're a juvenile or in development as we may if we're very, very old. And so the Greenland shark is one of the most exciting projects that I've worked on, because not only is it in a beautiful Arctic environment, it's stenothermic, it's slow, it has a whole kind of range of mysteries around it, but it's also really old. So from a heart perspective, that's absolutely fascinating.
That's awesome.
Christine was out studying, with another Greenland shark. I'm at the bottom of this totem pole. I have no experience or professional engagement with Greenland sharks.
I haven't worked with Greenland sharks before. No, I haven't worked with them.
Because one of the things about these sharks is that we think about them up in the Arctic or around Greenland, but they are also found in the Gulf of St. Lawrence and off of the coast of Canada. So they do come a bit further south, but the waters are still really cold where they are.
Does that seem like a seasonal thing that they're moving? Or, I guess we just don't really know that much, I guess.
I don't think we have enough really good tracking data, long tracking data to know. I mean, they can move long distances and sometimes they don't move very big distances, but we need more tracking data. One of the problems with the tracking data of these animals is that a lot of the tags come up underneath ice, and so we don't find them. And then also, these animals not only live in a cold, ice-covered part of the ocean, but they also go really, really deep. So a lot of them are triggered to pop off as they go down, kilometers down. And then I think one of the things we've noticed is after being tagged, a lot of them, their first instinct is to go deep, and then the tag comes off. So they seem to be a particularly hard animal to do biologging on. I'm not a biologist.
But they're up at the surface, so that makes sense that they'd want to get back to like cold, dark.
No, I was going to say, you and me, Jules, we mostly have done tropical work, so I've never had to consider when the satellite tag pops up for me to actually not only like find it, but also get data off of it. It can't be stuck under an ice flow. What an interesting problem. Like a very unique to that environment.
Absolutely.
There's no ice down here in Hawaii.
Yeah, and I guess unlike when they tag marine mammals, which they know are going to surface, these guys don't have to surface. So as I said, I'm not a tiger, but I work with some of the biologgers, and they find it fascinating, but a frustrating biologging project. And I suppose also they're not economically an important species, so it's hard to get the funding to tag. Like the tuna projects are just huge because we need more populations. I mean, they're from a fisheries point of view, these animals are considered pests as opposed to anything else. And from scientists' point of view, it's really only been since that 2016 paper from John Stephenson's group that showed how old they are that people have really started to become fascinated with their biology and then trying to understand more about their life history and potentially to try and build that into protecting the animals.
How'd you get here? Where'd you come from? What's your
astrology sign?
Yeah. Well, I'm Sagittarius. I won't tell you how old I am. I can't tell you I'm only 5'1", which is one of the funny things about Zoom. Everyone looks at me, they're like, Man, you're short. So I guess I got interested in. I mean, I think everybody is fascinated by the marine environment and the aquatic environment. But probably it was in my undergraduate career when I was doing a field course out in the Bay of Fundy in New Brunswick in Canada that I started to try and do like science in the marine environment, and I absolutely loved it. It's my first chance of realizing that you can ask a question, test it, and the ocean and the environment that the ocean provides. So in the Bay of Fundy, they're the biggest tides in the world. They go up 40 meters and down 40 meters in a day. And so I was working with somebody called Professor Louise Milligan, who was at the University of Western Ontario, and we just looked at what happens to the animals when the tides go out, and they're fish. So how do they breathe when there's no water? How do they excrete waste when there's no water? And it was the first kind of thing that I got into. And I was like, wow, that's a really good question. How do they do it? And it really got me hooked on trying to think about the impacts of the environment on an animal, on the organisms. How I got to the Hartz was when I moved to British Columbia. I was working with somebody called Professor Tony Farrell, and he asked me a really simple question, which is what limits maximum heart rate in fishes? In mammals, heart rate's really high, and it can go really high. And one of the ways that you change your cardiac output is by pumping faster. But a lot of ectothermic animals can't pump above a certain level, or they rarely do. And so he just said, what are the mechanisms? What limits this? So a really broad question, but actually, because the heart is so vital for all body actions, it drives, well, of course I'd say that because I'm a cardiac physiologist. It's never nothing simple. Simple in the front, but it's deeply mechanistic at the end. Like what stops you from being able to go faster? Asking me that question got me interested in heart function. And then we so this is the short answer actually. So from that, so the animals that are able to break the aquatic animals that are able, fishes that are able to break this kind of ceiling of heart rates are the tunas. Tunas are fast pelagic predators,
Right.
and so that sent me to Hawaii. So I went to Hawaii to work with somebody called Rich Brill, who was working with the National Marine Service and NOAA, and that got me on ships working around the Hawaiian Islands looking at these tunas. And then that team of people that I worked with then as a graduate student got in touch with me in 2015 and said, we've been working up in the Arctic on this amazing species. In the time intervening from being a graduate student to 2015, I've been doing quite a lot of polar work on different organisms and cold tolerance. And they said, would you like to come back on the boat with us? But rather than being like in bikinis around Kona, you're going to be in like a survival suit, hats, mitts, and on the head of a ship in the North Atlantic and the Arctic. I was like,
My absolute
that sounds
nightmare.
amazing. Sign me up.
Yeah, I know you said hell yeah to that regardless.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
that's
such
sick.
an amazing place to be. So yeah. So that's kind of how I got to working on on this amazing animal, and how I got the privilege, I suppose, of working with them was partly because I'd worked with some of these people when I was a graduate student. So it just shows how it kind of
Networking is
Connections.
everything. You connect, and it's a small world in weird ways. And then as you get into the shark world, it's kind of a puddle sometimes. I mean, Greenland sharks are unique to the mainstream, I think.
yeah. Well, I think they're such a strange shark, aren't they? Because they sound so exotic, but when you look at them, they look like this giant sausage. In fact, I just had sausages for dinner,
Sausage
and I was
blimp.
thinking about it. I'm like, I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say it. But like they just look like these kind of they're not really they don't look particularly streamlined. They don't look fierce. They kind of
Mm-mm.
just look like this nice meandering floating
Derpy.
sausage that swims through the ocean.
Just an
Compared
Arctic bratwurst, you
yeah,
know.
it's kind of like an Arctic flowers with, of course, spikier skin. But yeah,
Yeah.
Well, I find it that's so fascinating, the copepods on their eyes.
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Did you get to see any of those?
Yeah, that's really disturbing, the copepods. Yes, and the first time I saw it, I got really quite upset about it. And it's a weird paradigm. Now, again, this isn't my specialty in terms of the shark, but it's quite bizarre because they have the, I keep wanting to say tympanic membrane, but it's not tympanic.
The
That's in your
corneas
ear.
are being
Yeah, but like
Tapetum
the thing, the thing
tapetum
that gives
lucidum.
like cat eyes the fluorescence in the back of their eye.
oh,
So all sharks of that superfamily have that feature. But why would a shark that lives so deep when there's probably the absence of light have that kind of surface in the back of the eye? I mean, it's just that itself is just
for
interesting.
the shit that glows in the dark down there.
Yeah.
For
Yeah,
Christine's
but
lantern
I
shark.
suppose.
For my babies.
Yeah, but yeah, maybe it would amplify that small amount of light.
And they do
But I
come up to the
suppose
surface at
it's
times. right?
They do. They do. But
Closely
one of my
related.
colleagues, actually, Rich Burl, the same person I was working with when I was a graduate student with tuna, he has looked at some of the functions of these eyes. So actually looked at retinal acuity and shows that everything moves really slowly in the retina. The other thing that they did was they took the cornea that has, so it's facially really thick, and they have cornea where they have had many of these copepods stuck to the cornea, and you can see ones that are currently there or ones that have fallen off. You can see the damage across the cornea. And if you do something as simple as like put a newspaper down and then take this cornea and put it over top of it, you can see that you can't see through the lens, and because of the damage to the eye. So they really do cause effectively blindness to
Yeah.
acuity. They might still be getting light in, but they're not going to be able to
I mean,
resolve
there's
through
like
that.
things just like attached to your eyeballs. That seems like that alone, besides the degradation of the cornea, like you're
Exactly. But even when it falls off, the damage is there. But yeah, I mean,
Mm.
again, that's not my work, but when they were doing it, it was really fascinating to see that they probably can't, they just can't see. But alternatively, their olfactory bulbs are insanely massive, bigger than their brains. So
Mm.
they're using other scents very well to be able to negotiate.
well, and their heart's still beating.
And their hearts are still beating. So that's something I know something about. I don't know much about their
They are
corneas
alive.
or their things, but I know their hearts are still beating. Exactly.
It's like, what? How often does it even go? Like, I feel every 5 minutes.
Yeah, like, well, it can be, yes, it
Yeah.
can be super, super, super slow. I mean, we've measured them both anesthetized and ex vivo, so it's hard to try and get a sense of what the intrinsic swimming heart rates are because we haven't got like a heart rate tag in a moving animal. But yeah, it's really slow. So 4 beats a minute, 6 beats a minute. But we know that the beats when they happen. So back to that original question from my PhD thesis, what limits maximum heart rate? Well, why does it matter if you're not cardiac output of the blood that you're sending around the body, which is satisfying all those important things, is a product of both the frequency of the heart rate and the stroke volume or the amount of blood that you pump. And what we noticed from the Greenland shark is that it has a long time between beats to fill with blood. And when it does contract, it contracts really slowly and pushes all that blood out. So even though the heart rate is slow, its cardiac output is probably partly compensated by pumping a lot of blood slowly, if that makes sense.
Do we say that's efficient?
Well, I mean, it's one of the things that we think about is that rate, so firing rate, is really temperature dependent. And so if you're in a cold area, increasing rate is going to be hard. But going slow and compensating with volume as they kind of trade off of each other is one way to get around living in a cold place where maybe changing heart rate is going to be more challenging than if you're living in a warmer environment. Well, we'll need flow probes on the hearts in vivo to be able to really look at this trade off. But yeah, their hearts definitely beat slow. But that's not surprising because they're living in a cold place. They move relatively slowly. And what we don't know is how fast their hearts can beat if they are part of a chase. We don't have those kinds of measurements. And that would be fascinating to know what's their scope for increasing heart rate or increasing blood volume.
That's
Because I
true.
mean, they are predators, right? So most of the time, they're like you're talking about, pretty chill. But when they are hunting, they have to be able to move quickly. And so, of course, their
Absolutely.
heart has to be able to pick up and they're using more oxygen. But I'm like, the way you're talking, I'm envisioning something that's like not able to just dart quickly. It might need like a whole second to like ramp up, but that can't be true.
But they can dart quickly. But if you remember, most of that darting is anaerobic because it's that white muscle, which is the whole body
Yeah.
of the fish. So there will be some blood going to it, but it's an
Different
anaerobic
charge.
fast response.
Mm.
But certainly, I think that would be a fascinating thing to be able to know how long they can maintain a fast darting action or a high
Mm.
frequency chase. I think the prevailing thought, and again, I'm not, this is again, well, I'm probably not the best person to ask. My colleague, Julius Nielsen, who was a PhD student of John Stephenson, did a lot more work on their food and their guts and what they actually kind of what they're feeding on and their food, their feeding ecology, that's the term. And so a lot of what's in their guts shows that they certainly are scavengers at one level. So they will scavenge
Mm.
what they can. And when they predate, they found like whole baby seals in the stomachs of these animals. But there's no way that a fast, warm blooded mammal wouldn't be able to evade a slow Greenland shark. So the idea is that the seals kind of sleep beneath the ice, trying to avoid being caught by land predators like polar bears or other things. And of course, they're kind of sleeping there under the water, and unbeknownst to them, from the deep comes this and just swallows them whole because it doesn't look like there's a struggle, at least in the ones, some of the ones that Julia saw in the stomachs. So that's more like ambush predator than chase predator. So that might kind of explain their ability to move slow and quiet, and then just that last flash and get them.
You got me, because I was just watching, I caught a snippet of a nature documentary situation where they were looking at the new babies, but the babies can only hold their breath for a couple minutes of this seal. And I know there's seals under ice flow, and the mother, she could do 30 minutes. So she would leave bubble pockets for the baby to be able to travel under the ice. And I'm just imagining if one like would have suffocated, or if didn't, just swallowing a baby seal whole is so gnarly.
I watched the same thing. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, because the ice flow is like miles long. Yeah, freshwater seals.
Are those the freshwater seals? That was just so crazy.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I love the idea of this of them catching sleeping animals. The species the species name of the Greenland shark is Microcephalus Microcephalus somniosus, which is basically sleepy small brain. But the sleepy part is like you
Harsh.
think of it because they're slow moving. You don't think of them being sleepy as they're attacking sleepy predators. It's kind of a good way to bring it all
A
in.
seal's nightmare.
Yeah,
Just like wake up in
A
the
literal
stomach of
nightmare.
a
You wake
Greenland
up in
shark.
the stomach. Just like imagining like a cute little seal.
Bad luck.
You're just eaten by like an underwater sausage blimp while you're asleep.
Yeah, it's an unworthy way to end, really.
Holly, do you have any future projects for Greenland work, or are you do you get like called to do those sharks just kind of when there's another project at large, or what are you working on now otherwise?
We've been trying to go. So if we bring it back to the heart and aging, one of the things that we've obviously been really interested in is how these animals age, and how their hearts are able to beat for hundreds of years. Where if you think about humans or most mammals, heart disease is a feature synonymous with aging. So it's the biggest risk factor for cardiac disease, even more so than like smoking or lifestyles, is just how old you are. And so as we age, our hearts start to fail. So what happens? Why aren't these animals dying of heart failure or cardiac arrest? And so we've been really fascinated to look at that. But to be able to do that, it means actually taking the hearts and taking them apart, studying them across levels. And because we don't go out there and kill sharks for their hearts, the only hearts we work with in our studies are ones where the animal's been brought to the surface and it's either swallowed the hook or it's been preyed upon by another shark. So if it's released, it will die. And so then we get those hearts to do the studies, but it means that we have a very small N number because it's completely random and by chance. And so, yes, we do want to go back because each time we do, we get one or two more pieces of information, but we can't go back and say, we're going to do this study because it's pretty much a fishing trip in a lot of ways. And then it's a fishing trip where the animals can't be tagged and released. They have to be euthanized because they won't survive. And so we've got hopes for potentially an Arctic station. So there's two places that I've been working, all as part of John Stephenson's team out of Copenhagen. One is aboard the ships, which I really like because you're at sea. But the other one is the Arctic station, which is on a little island on the west side. So about halfway up Greenland on the west side. The island is called Disco Island, which is just so cool. If you're going to work on any little island, Disco. The first time, yeah, absolutely. We packed a disco ball in our research kit, and we opened it up there, and we're like, yeah, disco ball. And there's a lab technician who lives on the island and works at the station. And we're like, look at what he has. And he said to us with like completely deadpan, you're the first people to ever do that. And then we realized we're not, and we were so disappointed.
I was gonna say there's no way. You got me.
Completely making fun of. Yeah, it's disco with a K, which actually makes it cooler. Yeah. So one of my PhD students might be going back this summer. I'm not able to go back because it conflicts when I'm teaching a field course. But we try and have an expedition every 2 years. And if I can't go, then either my students go or the team that I work with, they're able to, if there was an animal that was able to get heart tissue for they would get it for me and send it to me. So I'd rather go myself, but the animals and don't go to waste if we're able to use them. And then we can start to look at all these. By the way, I feel like I'm talking all the time and I'm not letting Christine and Jules say anything. So I'm a
No, that's the
total
point.
chatterbox and I'm really sorry.
No one wants to hear from us. I did want to ask though, before we move on quick, you said earlier that all of your sampling of the heart tissue at least is opportunistic, right? So you're not going out and targeting them and killing them. It's when they're already dead and you're able to collect. But you said that sometimes there are other sharks that kill them. So does that mean that
Yeah,
sometimes
they're
what's going on there?
they're not. So what's happening there is that there's the other sharks are the same species. So it's the other Greenland sharks. They're the only large shark up there, and it's only other Greenland sharks. And what they do is really bizarre. So we catch them through by longline fishing, and so they're on a line. The lines are not that far apart, but if a shark is on a line and another shark comes up, it eats its stomach. So that's what you mainly see is the second Greenland shark, and because you can see the bite marks, they're definitely Greenland shark, and they basically eat out the gut, and sometimes they leave the rest of the animal, and so you pull up a shark whose gut's been eaten, and you can tell it's a Greenland shark, which is just kind of a bizarre. We've noticed that a few times, but because it's so cold, often the heart's still beating, so we can still use those hearts and look at them. So you've got a shark with no gut, but its heart's still beating. It's quite insane. But also, one of the most probable things is that the shark has actually swallowed the hook, and it's
Right.
if it's deep in the shark, there's no way that we can get it out, and then they'll try and regurgitate. So that's another time that we end up euthanizing the animals.
Well, yeah, that's probably a good excuse to euthanize if their heart's beating.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and
It's
it's
really
specifically the
great.
stomach. It's not like other organs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so
You
weird.
guys are like
That's like
positive. That's
orca.
yeah, exactly. I'm thinking about orcas port and starboard down in Cape Town, going for the livers.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. I mean, it's the soft part of the belly is where they go in and take it. So they probably would get some liver in there as well. But yeah,
Maybe that's just the easiest to get in, right? Because when we do
Access.
incisions with acoustics, you want that thin membrane, and yeah, like stabbing a knife through your back is nowhere near as efficient as this
no,
gruesome
they
turn.
know each other's weakest part. Absolutely.
Okay, wait. Since we're focusing on your Greenland shark work, like what one of these missions looks like from your perspective, or what you're doing there, or
Yeah.
samples and tags and all that.
So my lab's question is, how do these sharks live how do the hearts beat for so long without showing signs of aging that are associated with aging in mammalian models? So one of the most straightforward things we've looked at is atherosclerosis. So that's thickening of the arteries. It causes coronary artery disease. It's one of the precursors to heart failure in the aging population. So it's a huge problem. And so we've just kind of approached it from saying, well, do we see any signs of atherosclerosis, meaning plaques forming in the coronary arteries of the hearts, or do we see any kind of precursor to atherosclerosis, so changes in the numbers of capillaries? Do we see anything associated with an aged blood supply to the heart? So just to remind you, the coronary blood supply is the supply that brings oxygenated blood from the gill directly to the heart. So it's the heart's oxygen supply. And we don't. So we have been able to find no evidence across all of the sharks we've looked at, from the somewhat younger ones to the very older animals, no evidence of any kind of change in any of the health of the coronary vasculature, which is really phenomenal. And what's exciting about that is that people have looked in other shark species and in migrating salmon, and you do see evidence of coronary lesions. So it's not like they just don't exist in the shark world or in the teleos world. We do know that they can have them, but we can't see any evidence just with aging in this animal, which is, we think, quite exciting. We've just been doing some micro CT scanning where we have like a 3D model of the coronary vasculature going into the heart, and we can follow it down through all the branches, and they just look fine. It looks exactly the same if it's from a shark that is probably a teenager to if it's a shark that's late middle age. We don't see any differences in any of those, which is pretty cool. So that's one of the things I think we're pretty much going to wipe our hands with and say there's no evidence of coronary artery disease.
It is super fascinating that they just live in this lifelong ice bath and something's catering to their heart health or their success. I mean, it's mind-boggling for sure.
And actually, you just brought up a really kind of key point, which is fine. We've been able to show it doesn't exist. What we don't know is how. We don't know how they're not having this, but now we could say they would be a good model to try and understand how you can age without developing coronary artery disease, because exactly how they do it, we still don't know. So that's going to be the next step of that investigation, is to try and actually figure out what could be maintaining this healthy vasculature.
So is that something that's easy to find funding to do?
In a model where you can control it in the lab, yes. But if you ask for a big pot of money and then say you need to also get me a boat, and then when I get on that boat, I might get one animal, I might get three, I might get none, then it's more difficult because this is publicly funded money. Is it I mean, if we were able to figure that out, that would be great. But how many trips, how much time, how much? So it's
I think it's not like a difficult environment to get to.
Yeah.
exactly.
It's super pleasant to work in, I'm sure.
So Holly, our backstage gal, our editor and piece cutter Kat, she also introduced us to you, Holly, and she gave us a little tip that you have these awesome blog series, and I guess I just wanted to bring that into our interview and then let you run with it and tell us more about it.
Well, the first expedition that I was joining in 2017, at that time I was a trustee of the Physiological Society of the British Isles, and most of the people, no, I wouldn't say, a lot of the work that goes on, the physiologists do, is very biomedical and looking at kind of aspects of human physiology. And my colleagues at the Physiological Society, especially those who were working in event management and in outreach, just said, well, this is really exciting physiology. This is different from what happens if you run up the stairs. This is looking at physiology of aging in the Arctic. What would be great is, could we give you recording equipment and send you with it, and could you make a video diary of your time? We'll edit it, and then we'll use it to try and encourage and show young people that physiology is really exciting, because it gets you out into the field asking these amazing questions about aging, about heart function. So I said, sure, no problem. Unlike everybody on the call except me, I'm not very good at technology and podcasting. I had a GoPro, and I kind of knew how to well, the first one was going to be how we get there, because getting to Greenland in and of itself is a bit of an experience. Small planes that took off, didn't land, winds, going back to another station, kind of like that, if you're a small plane person and you get scared, it's not the place to be. It was pretty like snowstorms. And then I wanted to talk about life on the boat, and so I tried to do all of this, and I think I captured a lot of what was happening. I went around and interviewed people. I kind of tried to tell the stories of what we were doing. I hope that I'm actually being clear on this call, because one of the things I realized when I was doing that blog is I'm far more of a mumbler than I think I am. And so the the Physiological Society, actually had to overwrite half of the things because they couldn't understand what I was saying. And they had to put on text. They said, great footage, Holly. Do you mind if we dub you? But it was really, really fun blog. I really enjoyed doing it, and kind of, walking through the daily life of what the experiments are like, what the rooms are like, what working on a research vessel up in the Arctic is like, and showing that to students was really exciting. And I think it actually made me reflect on the kind of the privilege I had to being part of that team. It also made me reflect on the team, because as I went around and interviewed all of my colleagues, both my scientific colleagues, the fishermen, the captain, they were all men. And so there's me on the boat, and I was thinking, am I the only female person on the boat? But no, the cook was also a female. So her and I had tea in the afternoon and caught up. But it also made me realize, when you actually start to interview people, you recognize what's around you. And it was an absolute privilege to be there. But I certainly was one of two women on the research ship up in the middle of the North Atlantic. So a bit different.
Like this panel.
No, this
all
panel is
gals.
amazing.
Except Ethan.
Just
kidding.
But that's what's so nice about being on this panel is to be talking to women scientists and fish scientists, and being able to hear your enthusiasm and hear about your stories too.
Well, we're super happy to catch you in between all your work and travels and projects, and I'm glad that we are all connected as well, since I know Kat spoke highly of you and we all kind of jumped in. It's been a pleasure. We're learning more. I think that's what we want to do too. is like we're learning a little bit on each of these podcasts as well. I'm like sitting in on this interactive lecture, like, wait, what?
Right.
How does this work?
And it's terrible because we must have just passed in the night in Hawaii. So I'm really sad to have not met you in Hawaii, but I'm glad that I'm getting to meet you now.
Well, Holly, everyone here obviously thinks that Greenland sharks are awesome, and all the work that you do. But the average person might not understand why they are important. We talked about them maybe not being terribly economically important, which could potentially change in the future. But why should the average person give a shit about the Greenland shark?
It's such a good question. Well, when I'm giving a big lecture to people on the Greenland shark, I spend all of this time talking about how they might hold the keys to longevity. So what we can learn about how our hearts can keep functioning, how we can get rid or avoid or change some of the things that plague us and our heart physiology as we age. But then I kind of end these lectures with a slide that's do you remember that famous quote by John F. Kennedy about ask not what this country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And there's a really lovely picture of Kennedy sitting in a boat with his son on a beach. The boat's actually up on the beach. And I don't know, maybe it's some romantic, but I think that's such a beautiful quote. And I've changed it to ask not what the shark can do for you, which is what I've been doing that whole lecture, but what we can do for sharks. And I say that because then I put up like 70% of all sharks are threatened with extinction. From aquatic animals, they're the most vulnerable of all aquatic genre. I mean, other than amphibians, they're the most threatened class of animals in the world. So just showing how vulnerable and precious these animals are and how much we need to understand about them to be able to protect them. And the people might not care specifically about sharks in general. They might care about this shark because it might hold keys to longevity. But if we don't protect the oceans, protect its environment, protect where it pups, then we'll never be able to answer those questions. And so protecting this shark, protecting all sharks, because many sharks are very long lived, and they all, I'm sure, have secrets that will be fascinating for humans. So I think in a lot of ways, people understand why this shark is cool because they age so much, but it's a continuum of all the sharks are cool and all the sharks are important, and they're really really struggling, and so we need to know more about them to be able to reel their protection around them properly.
So
In
true.
their environment. I mean, they're in the ocean, not on the ice floes, but yeah, they're getting hit by the changing temperatures for sure.
And also getting hit by because probably one of the reasons why they have survived so long is not just their physiology, but they live in the deep, dark waters where there's very little human activity and very little other predators up there. And so as the planet warms, as species distributions are moving north, fishing fleets are moving north again, and that is meaning that these sharks are being caught as bycatch in the halibut industry far more than they have been when the halibut industry was fishing further south from their actual environment. So they're not hiding up there anymore. We're up there with them, and we're going to be more increasingly up there as the ice melts. So I think it's really important to be able to know where they are, what they need, and how to protect them.
Yeah, fortunately they have some kind of refuge, but we're so good at desecration. I mean, and not even of our own kind, of everything around us. Yay, humans!
Yay, humans! Yay, humans! Save the sharks!
So
Save the
proud.
humans. Yeah.
I was talking to another researcher recently, and he had done some work on the Greenland sharks, and he was saying that every single live one that came up had these like stripe marks on it, and it was because they had become entangled in the line for crab pots, I think it was. Every single one that came up had an entanglement, and so I guess a lot of them too, like when they're pulling up the traps, they pull up entangled dead Greenland sharks. So already today, they're coming in contact with fishing and fishing pressure. They're just, not the target species. He was telling me as well that, and I'm not going to say exactly where it was, but up in Canada, they have such an important aspect to human culture up there, and they're not a species that is necessarily their favorite, and they view them as not only a nuisance but a bad omen when they come up to the surface. And so he was saying that sometimes when there's a lot of blood in the water, they've been fishing, the Greenland sharks will come up, and they'll actually come up into like super shallow waters, like 2-foot waters, and they'll be like rolling as if they're like blood drunk, coming up to the shallows in the surf and like rolling around in this blood.
Definitely
Wild,
do that.
right?
I
And they're
don't. I
like,
mean,
It's into the
hi.
chum diaries. This is like she
Yeah.
like
But I saw some videos of it and it was wild to me, like death rolling on the beach.
so
This is a
one of
deep
the
sea
things.
shark, right?
Yeah, but one of the things that they do, one of their kind of anti-stress, so if they're on a line, if they get hooked, especially if it's a long line, what they do is roll. So if they
Mm.
realize they can't get away, they roll and they roll and they'll roll themselves up in the line and then they'll unroll and they'll roll back up. And so what they end up doing is you do see marks on them, but they also exhaust themselves with this constant rolling. So I don't know why they be rolling at the surface, but maybe they think that they can get away. Because I'm assuming
clearly
that's
the
what they're trying to
bloodbath.
do. Yeah, they're like, I love this
Yeah,
sandy bloodbath. I don't know.
it's
But it
amazing.
seems to be a response that they have when things aren't great is to roll. It's probably trying to get
Interesting.
away.
Or maybe like when they're
Yeah.
overwhelmed.
But we need to ask a behavioral.
We gotta look sensory overload.
Yeah, like,
It's
whoa,
just
so much
over,
blood,
yeah.
yay.
Let's take
Well, on that note,
the bloodbath and let's take the bloodbath and run into our chum diaries. Dee, 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 dee.
finger
What
gun.
were we? It's like how does it smell? Wasn't there? Didn't you give us a really great like foreshadowing of some
It's
really
bad.
noxious?
It's really bad. So sharks stink, obviously. These sharks are particularly smelly, like strong smelling sharks. But what's worse is what they love is dead marine mammal. And so on the on the
Just
deck
like
of these,
Christine.
yeah, on the deck of these boats, what we've done is gone like our. I haven't done this, but some poor, unfortunate graduate students have had to do this, which is we get a report of a beached dead whale or beached dead seal, and they go scoop it up, chainsaw it into small pieces of chunk of thing, and then bring it on the boat. And so it's just bags of rotting dead mammal, and the rotting and the grosser it is, the better it is to catch the shark with. And it's much better if it's marine mammal than like a rotting land mammal, but the marine mammals smell really bad. And so you can
Really
imagine
good.
that you're in the North Sea, so it's
That
rough,
does.
like 3 meter wave, big waves. So everyone's feeling a bit like, then you open a bag of like absolutely rancid, like
Everyone on the deck starts rolling like a Greenland shark.
it's so bad.
Everyone
It's
starts
so,
chumming the
so
waters with
bad.
their own
And
chum.
I mean, yeah, it's some people have
That's
to
just so
go, and it's we also there's like a rule of like there's clothes that are touching this stuff outside. It's almost like a decontainment field. Like you take everything off, and then you go through one level and you clean, and you go back in. But your clothes, like you smell the shark on your hands regardless of what you're doing. Like there's always that kind of a bit of a shark smell, which I have to say I kind of like the marine mammal, no, but there's a little bit of that of the Greenland shark smell, and I'm like, aw.
Aw.
So cute.
You're
That's
cute,
gross.
cute, cute. Come on, little green shark.
You stinky little sausage, you.
Yeah, you stinky little frozen sausage.
You blind little, you
Yeah,
blind
you
little
blind little
old
frozen
sausage
sausage.
man.
Yeah, they can live
Okay.
forever. How do you do it?
I mean, if you can live
That's
forever,
gotta
I
be
mean,
a future funding. Like, that's what humans want to do, though. Like, longevity is all the rage, right? People are doing crazy things with skincare and.
But they want to smell good. They want us to live forever and
I was
still
about to
smell
say, though,
good.
would you live to
Well,
like
you gotta.
400 years old if you had to smell? If you stank, is it
Yeah,
worth it?
I don't want to know the answer to that because like just that's a bad thought.
So that's what you said, though. You want it stinky with the, not nostrils, but the olfactory bulbs is larger
Yeah,
than your brain. That's
Mm,
like definitely going to be like, it's
great.
yeah.
like,
But they
sorry,
must
I'm
love the smell of
distracted.
it because they're like, dead rotting.
They all just have ADHD.
Yeah, yeah. Well, absolutely. I mean, and the other thing, which is like I can't say it's a guilty secret, but I mean it's a terrible secret, which is that I love like being a marine biologist and I love working on boats, but I totally get seasick. I'm devastated to have to admit it, but I am like completely get. I mean, not on a if it's calm out, I'm fine, but as soon as you put me in a rolling ocean, I just go completely green. But but on top of that, but if I take the patch, like you wear the patch thing behind the ear, I'm absolutely fine. But it's a GABA inhibitor, and one of the side effects of that is that in certain people it can cause vision blurring. And and I'm happen to be one of those people. So either I'm sick or I can't see. It's neither. It's not great. And I mentioned this because you've got to go and do these seafaring tests to be on these ships. When I told the doctor, I was like, okay, well, one of the things of the seafaring test is you've got to be able to see. So if somebody falls overboard, you can see them in the sea, and they're just like, yeah, we're not passing you for that. Because like they're like, if your vision blurs from not being ill, then you're not a good enough seafarer to be able to find somebody in the water. So right now, if somebody does go overboard, they'd be like,
Don't
everybody on
call
deck
Holly.
except Holly. Holly, go below deck. You're in the way. You can't see.
To work up this Greenland, and you're like, where's the
Where's
shark?
Greenland?
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel like I've heard that quite a bit.
it does
People are
complicate things.
gotta be tough
Or
being out
seasick.
there and
Or
seasick.
yeah, it is. But again, if with the right medicine, you can totally deal with it.
But Holly, do you want to close us with any final remarks, or what you're working on next, or where anything you haven't mentioned so far?
I mean, I guess just how exciting it is to get to work in the ocean. The ocean is a hugely changing place, and both you and Christine both work in this space, and it's for people who are interested in what's happening on the world. People tend to feel depressed or sad, but it's actually there's so many fantastic opportunities. Things are changing, but that means it needs more people out there to measure them, look at them, report on them, discuss them, and so there's so many opportunities. So if people are listening to this and thinking, oh, I love marine biology or I really love sharks, there's a place for you there to do it. And whether it's tagging them and following them or cutting them up and looking at their physiology or trying to figure out why they like to smell, rotten mammals, there's a place for you, and all of that helps us to protect this amazing ecosystem. So I think it's just great that people are even tuning in. So whoever's tuning in, thank you.
Is this, Holly, I have one more. Is this at what, did you know you were going to end up where you are today and doing Greenland sharks or focus? Like, has your journey adapted, and have you taken those opportunities, or did you feel like you had a straight line from A to B?
I think no, nothing in life is a straight line. I think I like the environment impacts, and I like choosing a system that I think is so dynamic and so important, and its regulation feeds everything else. It gives you the ability to migrate. It gives you the ability to have the freedom to reproduce, to do whatever you. I feel like you need heart reserve, you need cardiac function, and so I think I'm not saying that I don't want to be a nephrologist, but I mean, I'm really happy about the heart because I find it such a dynamic organ to work on.
Damn
And because it
kidneys.
pumps blood to all these other organs, you can still kind of talk about all these other organ systems. So I feel like that was always going to be there. But I don't know if I ever dreamed that I would be working on this fantastic animal up in the Arctic, and especially that it would be a follow-on from working on other fantastic animals in Hawaii. But yeah, I'm not gonna. I love it, and I don't want to stop.
I love the tuna connections and the Hawaii connections and the JFK. We got all jam-packed in here, man.
Yeah. Multifaceted lady here. Well, Holly, thank
I
you so
I was
much.
like, not kidding. I was like, we could talk for 5 days.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I'm such a
100%.
chatterbox. So,
No, it's great.
but thank you both so much. You're absolute heroes. So thank you so much, and I hope some of your other guests give you guys more of a chance to talk than I have, because
No,
I'm
this
sure
is
people
what.
listening are going to be really keen to hear about your work.
Yeah, we're just trying to keep up with you, Holly. We're just. All
Not at all. Well,
right, I'm
thank
gonna
you.
dip out, y'all. Thank y'all. Sam, episode 1.